Welcome to On, the Hash House Harrier podcast for interviews, history, and stories. I'm your host, Ra. Today on the podcast, we are in Asia, Europe. I'm not sure exactly where, but we're in Turkey with a longtime hasher, now past 30 years. Welcome today on the On podcast, MeMe. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Great. Let's introduce you with your hashing origin story. When, where, and how did you get to your first hash?
Oh, that's interesting. I was on my industrial placement out in Bandung, Indonesia in 1992. As it turns out, hash out there hashes at 4 o'clock on a Monday. Work never finished until 4:15. And it turns out August the 17th was a bank holiday because that's Hari Merdeka, Freedom Day in Indonesia. So I went hashing, went on the trail, got to the end. Someone pointed out to me, oh, look, that guy over there is the GM. And I can't remember his hash name, but his name was Gus. And we'd had an argument at work the week before because I think he was quite high up in GE engines and I had been processing the black box data. And I went and had a look at his engine with a torch and he got bent out of shape. I just went, oh, I'm not sticking around for circle, and left. That's my entry to hash.
What was Bandung like in 92? How many people? What was the trail like?
It was in the middle of the jungle. Everybody had drivers, so there was no drink driving, no concerns like that. You run at 4, sunsets at 6. So you go out for a run through the jungle, through the rice paddies. Pretty much as if people think back to when hashing probably started, apart from it being more concrete buildings dotted around the fields, it was probably very much like that.
Genders, ages?
They were all mostly older than me, that's for sure. When I was 22-ish, actually. No, yeah, 22. There were some very nice local ladies, mostly mid-40s British and American contractors.
That makes it a little different than the original hashing, that they were already including women.
Definitely, yeah. And we found out about the hash because there were only about 4 or 5 bars that people drank in Bandung in those days. And each bar had little pigeonholes for social events that were going on. Not everybody had mobile phones. The web pages and items weren't so freely available. And you go from these 3 or 4 or 5 bars and you just pick up, you get the run list for the next couple of months.
With your work schedule, how frequently were you able to hash after that?
I didn't. Not until quite a few years later, till I was back in the UK.
When and where was that you resumed hashing?
Much to my shame, I didn't hash again until, I think it was, again, August for some reason, August 99.
And where
that was when Cranfield University. Cranfield's famous for having very few women at the postgraduate aerospace university campus. 9-to-1 male to female ratio. I didn't live on campus and I thought, you know what? I'm going to give hashing another go. So I then joined the Milton Keynes hash and I've hashed on and off with them up until, I would say, earlier this year.
Who was there in 1999 with Milton Keynes?
Yep. So basically the founder, Wiley Coyote / Grizzler, he was there. Doggy Bag, Arseover, or Mr. Arseover, or full name Arseover Tit, Pussy Warmer, I think One Lose Lautrec, who's now a New Zealand hasher, he was there. It was pre-friction, pre-crusty. Daisy was most likely there. Beyond that, I can't really remember. Oh, a guy called Rustler, I think. He was a bit of an old boy. He did all the hash scribing. And his wife, I believe her hash name was Enigma, because she loved doing crosswords. But I can't really remember many more than that from what's pretty much 24 years ago.
So in the interim, there's a couple people I hashed with in Cairo that are Milton Keynes. There's you, Condom Man and Sir Clugs.
Yes, Sir Clugs, I know. Yes, I love the history of his hash name, if you know it.
I do, of course.
Yeah,
you can tell your version of it. Go ahead. He hasn't been on here.
Well,
so.
He was named, I believe, in Africa somewhere, in a very adult hash. And it was, let's say politely, his hash name was actually "See You Next Tuesday, Lugs." Yeah, just in case any.
I'll mark this as adult, but yeah, it's cunt lugs. Yeah, that's all right.
That's right. And he turned up at the hash, and then it was, my God, this is the family hash. You can't call you that. Okay, we'll truncate your name and call you Clugs. And then after that, he got knighted by the Queen, and then became Sir Clugs.
He's in and out of Milton Keynes and Asia and Africa and Ghana and Philippines and yeah. So I haven't seen him for a while. See him at some of the big international events.
Yeah.
Was it your second trail ever was in Milton Keynes? Is that the way it worked?
That is true. And I think I got named on my fourth.
What's the story? How did you get named? What's that story?
I offered to lay trail on my third Milton Keynes hash. So I laid the trail and I got named that night. And then the following Monday, I got renamed.
What was the name that Monday and why? How'd that go?
The name that Monday was Sponge Finger.
Okay. Something happened?
No, not at all. I was a student. And as far as they're concerned, all students are sponges. And basically, I don't think they grasped fully grasped the concept that I was a fully EPSERC funded and company sponsored student. And the PhD I did was in wafer manufacture of the biscuit type, not the computer type. So Kit Kat, Sponge Finger. We went on the Westerham and North Kent hash weekend, the wank hash. And we got back from that weekend once they actually all got to know me. And we got back and they said, we have to change his name. We have to change his name. Because
why did it have to change? Oh, okay.
I started talking about my two favorite subjects.
Okay. So what do you remember about that weekend? Was that a surprise, or did you know the hash would be like that with travel clubs?
I don't see the hash as particularly wild personally. So it really wasn't any eye-opening big change. I lived in Asia for a couple of years, the early 20s. Coming to the hash in Europe is not wild. So,
but it can be a surprise to people with it can be.
I was surprised that there were more, and there weren't many naked people during the Saturday afternoon on the water slide, but there were more than I expected for the UK. There was the nude midnight run, which was basically predominantly Milton Keynes, and I think Chunderman, a couple of others that I really can't remember.
Yeah, that's a Milton Keynes specialty. Yeah, they like that.
I believe so, yeah. So when everyone else is doing nude runs, it's, again, fine. Off we go.
Do you remember setting your first trail? How'd that go?
I do. I actually set my first trail, I think my cohair, Limp, I think his hash name. I did a figure of 8 around Cranfield campus. And the campus has basically got an airfield in the middle of it. So we went around the top of the runway, down the other side, skirting the side of the village. Might have gone across the runway, which you're not meant to do. I can't remember, honest governor. And then we went around the residential side of it. Yeah, I believe the trail was well received.
You lived there for a while, finishing your studies on that program. Yeah. Did you get into mismanagement at Milton Keynes?
Yeah, again, it was literally very soon after I arrived, I became on sex. Literally within 5 or 6 weeks. They had their ag poo. They used to always have the trash. No one wanted to do the trash. No one wanted to really take on the on sex position. And I volunteered, and the arse over tit was going, it's quite unheard of, because normally we wouldn't let anybody that's so fresh to it and so keen start. Oh, another person and persons that may have been there on my first hash with Milton Keynes may have been Sheila, who at the time was married to Floss, and they unfortunately are no more together. Yeah, I got on top. Sheila relocated to the West Country, so when I did some work down at Bristol and started hashing quite a lot with the Greyhounds, and you probably know Stretch, I shared a house with Stretch for a while. We did a couple of hashes and met up with Sheila, Mad Dog, and a couple of the West Country hash. Roderick?
Well, where all have you lived and hashed around the UK then?
Myself,
Yeah.
I was based up in Warrington for a while, so I did a couple of hashes with the Wirral in Cheshire. But we're going back 20 years, and 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning didn't suit my lifestyle then. So I hashed a few times with them. I think Peter Pan was very prevalent with the Wirral and Cheshire hash. Manchester hadn't started by then. Up until about 2001, 2002, I was still travelling back down to Milton Keynes for the occasional hash weekend and event. And when I was working down in Bristol, I would nip up to a few places, basically between Bristol, up the M5 corridor, and hash there on the way back. A couple of places, I can't remember the name of the hashes, on a Thursday evening, some of them would hash. Yeah, and then more recently, because I'm from near Gatwick, I've hashed a couple of times with Brighton, who's obviously Bouncer and his missus, Angel. Did a couple of London hashes a few years back when I was visiting from when I was in Switzerland, the Christmas hash with them. But to be honest, most of my time, apart from the last 5 years, I've been working in Europe and hashing predominantly in Europe.
Before we get to Europe, did you hash regularly enough with any of those other places to do mismanagement with them?
No, didn't do any mismatch at all.
Okay.
Just did that brief stint in Milton Keynes.
Yeah. What about those hashes? What's the span of how they work? How far apart in terms of tradition and operation? What were the extremes of some of those hashes?
In the UK 20 years ago,
Yeah.
they were all fairly similar. I think the Milton Keynes are quite odd because they buy the cheapest, most awful beer they can get. And I have a little cubby box in the car park, and they actually mix the beer with water
Oh my God.
just to make it really awful. And if you end up getting 2 or 3 downs, you've hardly drank any alcohol. Because the problem with a lot of places in the UK, not necessarily Milton Keynes, is they have a lot of drivers. West Ham and North Kent, very rural, outside of London. It's typically country pubs, and the days of drink driving, either the risk or the desire, are long gone.
Yeah.
People aren't interested anymore. But basically, there's not so much of that. I think Wirral in Cheshire was they're the two I hashed most with, apart from the midweek ones in Bristol. Sunday mornings, they would always choose a pub that had a lounge. I believe a lot of the non-hashing wives really like to have a tea and scones in the lounge rather than standing there drinking beers in the bar area. And I think some of them quite liked, after the hash, stopping and having a Sunday lunch. So you can have a couple of beers, spend another hour or so eating, absorbs a lot of the alcohol. So you can then either the non-drinking partner can drive, or if you personally believe you're below the limit / want to risk it, you drive yourself.
Sure. You do a pretty good job of remembering names. That's good. Anybody who might hear this, love hearing their friends and themselves called out. Good work on that.
Well,
Let's talk about Europe. Where have you hashed significantly in Europe?
Oh, blimey. Trying to think time-wise. Not much there. Went to Europe 2005, didn't hash in Bremen. Back end of 2005, I went to hash in Munich with Bottom Blower, Smokestack, Coming Numb. Can't remember Ladbrokes' name, but something balls.
Was Shoham hashing?
Yep, yes, of course. Shoham Bathman. She was RA. I think it was literally her second to last trail. I didn't know she was RA. And I said something on trail. I say, I've got a snitch for you later on. And she went, I'd like to call MeMe in the circle for not knowing I was RA and trying to snitch on me on the way. I think that may have been a hash where they announced they were leaving and going to the UK, or it might have been when they announced they were having their first child, but I really can't remember. There was a family announcement.
Yeah, that sounds like child days. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would have been about 2000-ish. And then after that, I went back up to Bremen, nothing up there because Bremen doesn't have a hash. Don't think Hanover was that prevalent then. But during those years, I was commuting back to the Warrington-based wife, and all these, oh, you're going to go and do X, Y, Z and not come and see me. Dangerous times. You don't want to run that gauntlet too often. And then up to Bremen. And then I'd a 15-month stint up in Finland. Can't remember any names from up there, but they'd stopped. And then a half English, half Finnish hasher thought he would restart the Helsinki hash more than the hole in the ice. So I went to a couple of those hashes with him, which was, I believe it was like an October, November. And then my job finished over there. I was up in Tampere, which is about like an hour away by train, hour and a half. So I only did it a couple of times before I left the country. And I think after Finland, I went to Austria to work. So I hashed in Austria. Don't remember many names from there. I remember a few faces. I only did about 5 or 6 hashes because I work in aircraft design. So I'm out at airfields or near airports. And the time it takes to get into a city or to the other side of a city and then back out again in the evening, again, it's quite difficult, really.
What kind of trails do you like? Were most of these hashes suburban, urban, shiggy? And what's your preferences?
I much prefer shiggy countryside daytime. I've found, for me personally, a lot of hashers don't know how to use headlamps in winter. That they very much want to look up and see who's coming, blind you. When if they just waited 5 or 10 seconds, you see there and you go, yes, it's me. Hello. You don't have to blind me. And I found that brought the worst out in me, so I don't typically hash in the winter if I can avoid it. Because I get annoyed with people for not knowing how to use headlamps. I turn out to be the arsehole for calling them up on it. And
were any of those clubs not that more urban?
Yeah, one of the most urbans, because I was working in France for quite a while. I used to drive over to visit Sembach hash. And there's just too many names I can mention from Sembach.
Sure.
Back in those days, obviously, first time I went over to Sembach, it was, anybody got any crash space? Yeast infection, who's now in South Carolina with his wife, Yeast Melanoma. He put me up and we become really good friends. And I ended up being a groomsman for him 8 years ago.
Oh, nice. Did they get married in the States?
They got married legally elsewhere. But the main celebration for all the receptions and the breakfasts was with all the families and all the friends over in South Carolina.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that was cool. Cool. And obviously you've got the Butty's Nuts, you've got the All Thrust No Vector, you've got Coitus Interruptus, Takes 3, and many others that don't leap to mind under pressure.
Were you getting to event weekends apart from hitting the hash regular trails that you could make?
Yeah. I think one of my first hash weekends back in those days was the German Nash hash, which was actually organised by Winterthur Schaffhausen, hosted by Moose Diver in Friedrichshafen.
Remember how that go? All problem free, was it?
Absolutely loved it. I had 2 mobiles at that time, which back in 2012 was quite rare. Left one of them in the toilet, and I called one mobile from the other, and someone had handed the mobile I'd lost to Spare Rib. So on the Sunday, he's standing in the middle of the circle of about 150 people, calls the phone, and I answer it. And he doesn't see me. And he's just walking around to see who he can see with their hand up. And the one thing I remember about that circle was there was an older Harriet called, I guess it's Mimi or Memi.
There's a MeMe.
Yeah, she was there that weekend. And basically, Spare Rib called me in.
Oh, no. Yeah, 2 memes.
And then it was someone went, when one Mimi drinks, all Mimis drink. So after about 7 or 8, and it was like Spare Rib went, Mimi. And you could just see Mimi look at me. And it was, no more. What have you done? Please, no more. So, yeah, I do remember that. And then I did a few Sembach End of Summers and campouts and different things. Yeah, I did I think there was one of the Paris Nash hashes. But I got a new job down, I was in Switzerland for 6 years. So I hashed a hell of a lot with Zurich hash. So you've got, say, the main travellers, I would say, would be Wet and Ready, Thirsty Thursday, Belches with Wolves, and there's obviously others that have now started travelling a lot more, which would be Slippery Digit travels quite a lot now, Canada Wet travels quite a lot now. Even back then, you've got One Night Wonder travelled a bit. Then you've also got Slippery Digit who's travelling now. Don't really know how many others travel because I've been remote from Zurich. So obviously there are a lot of Christmas cash weekends that are due. Hosted a couple of events there as well.
How is their beer?
Swiss beer. It conforms to the German Reinheitsgebot. I wouldn't say it's fantastic beer. Nothing is as good as the Munich, as what me and Dad call it, Augustina Turner beer. If you know what that saying is. You've got Augustina beer. That's one of the famous Munich breweries. For me and the old man, because I used to work with my father in Munich, we used to call it Augustina Turner.
Right now I'm with you.
But you clocked why
we won't explain it. We'll let people listen to it a couple times to figure it out. Yeah.
And you know why we called it that?
It's got legs? I don't know.
Yeah, that's good, but that's not why. It's our favorite beer. And you know what? It's simply the best.
Oh, there you go. No, that's cool. That sounds like a commercial idea. You need to sell them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
No, get Tina Turner. It's a little late now, but yeah. AI could recreate her doing a beer commercial. So yeah, that's good stuff. What about anything bigger? You went to Nash Hash. Did you go to any continental or bigger events?
You know what? I can't even remember if I've been to a Eurohash. Yes, I have. I went to a Eurohash, I think was up in Krakow. And I did the Vienna one, actually. Can't remember if that Eurohash or... Yes, that was Eurohash. Because I laid trail for the bras and pants.
That's all coming back now. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So what year was that? The bras and pants has been going for a while.
Yeah, that's obviously with oral sex. And I think typically that's R-rated by Megasaurus. Occasionally have the elf and safety officer in, who is, his name escapes me. His name will come back to me. I think it was about 2014 was the Vienna one. It could have been slightly later.
We just did the bras and panties at the most recent Eurohash.
Yeah, the one up in Yorkshire,
was it? Castle. At the castle.
Oh, Berlau. Yeah, I was asked if I was going there to lay trail. Because the one we did in Vienna, we recce'd out the route to get there, but we were in cars. And it didn't occur to anybody that where our start point for the trail was, when we went there on double-decker buses, so we had a 1 hour delay to reroute to the start, or reroute.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. Me and Smartass said, give us a 10-minute head start. We laid trail from the village. We ran up the hill. We laid trail. We laid falsies. We picked up the trail where we met at this vantage point at the top of the hill, where we'd originally were going to come from. We went away, ran down the hill for a good 200 meters, rubbed out all the marks, continued the back half of the trail, and carried on at the brewery. Yeah, those were in my fitter days.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I've only done one Interhash, which was 2004.
How'd you like that?
Yeah, I loved it. I did a lot of trails. I hung around mostly with the Indo Nostalgia group. So that would be the Jetstreams, Mentionable. I think, I'm not sure if Lady Slipstream was there, or Lady Slipstream was there, or Blowback, the Sun. And obviously Penguin was there, and a few of the other names. Some of the Great White Hope, I think, was there. God bless him. Dearly departed, bless. Yeah, I think the trail I went on was sponsored by the Indo Nostalgia Hash. They provided 2 kegs of real ale beer. Nice. Obviously bright beer, because you don't have the 16, 20 odd hours to let it settle. Yeah. Oh, good. Happy days. I've always tried to do a lot of the Indo Nostalgia Hash weekends. They did one down in southern France. They tried to do one in the UK, one in Europe each year.
Was the one in France at Froggy's place?
Actually, I don't think Froggy was involved. I think it was a Brive Le Gaillard, probably pronouncing it wrong. And then, oh God, Debbie Harrell. I can't remember her hash name. It might be Bob. She has a place down on this south coast, not far from say. She hosted a weekend down there. That was pretty good. So that was enjoyable. Yeah, and then I think I did one in Oxford. There was one in Winchester recently. Yeah, I haven't really been to that many. There's one in Rugby recently-ish. Yeah, that's quite good. I just like them. The one rule they have is that the circle must last at least as long as, or if not twice as long as the trail.
Yeah. How important is circle singing to you in your life of a hasher?
As singing?
Singing
Oh,
and the circle, those
yeah,
traditions.
singing in the circle. Yeah. One thing I really don't like is RAs that think it's their circle. To me, it's the circle. The whole fundamental of the circle is the RA's there too. There's different styles. Go back to the nostalgia style and the old, let's say, early 90s, before people had things to go and do in the evening. The circle was your whole evening's entertainment. And you had drivers and things like that. And this is more what I'm told, and this is the style I like, is that circle finishes when the circle gets the RA and the GM who defend each other drunk. And it's the RA and the GM's job to stop the circle getting the other one drunk. You're deflecting and you're giving rebounds and you're pushing the downs off to other people to prolong the circle. And so some of the hashes that have been the Indian nostalgia hashes, they have that style. And I really like that. And then they break off to have a song. But it's lots of charges, lots of stories, a lot more interaction rather than RA standing in the circle telling 5 or 6 or 8 long, drawn out, not necessarily punchy stories. For me, it's you get in there, you welcome everybody, it's your circle, get on with it. And if it gets a bit flat as an RA, you then lift it up and you try to G it up a bit. And that's the style I much prefer, is it's everybody participates, no passengers in the circle. You get up there, you do a skit, you tell a joke, you say you'd rather do a song than anything else. And that song can be in the middle of downs or whatever. That to me is really important. I've been walking a lot recently and I don't really enjoy walking and then ending up going to a hash circle that's just the RA thinking they're the most important person on the hash.
Yeah.
When the two most important people are the hare and the beermeister.
Have you RA'd the circle?
I RA'd the circle on Saturday.
All right. And what's your style? Is your style just like you described?
I like to think it is. So yeah, this weekend had a trail laid by Dickhead. Where we've laid 3 He laid a trail, I laid a trail, and this weekend we actually got some of the local Ankara hashes to join us.
Cool. Now let's talk about Turkey. What'd you find when you dropped into Turkey? There's been a lot of changes there, aging, COVID, all kind of stuff. What's Turkey like now?
I arrived in May this year, so I'm not a long-term Ankara resident. I arrived literally 2 weeks before the election. Within 2 weeks of me arriving, I believe they kept prices artificially low of petrol and different things. So there was a price jump just after that. Tax on alcohol went up. So the beer I buy from my local supermarket went from 35 lira, £1, up to 41, £1.10. Not a big difference to me. I get picked up by the bus at work, provided. I get lunch at work. I get dropped off at home from work. So if I don't go out in an evening, I literally don't really notice any cost difference. So for me, the 68% inflation and also my accommodation tied in or locked in, I haven't seen it, but you can see it around that the cost of living crisis is hitting people.
Let's talk about the hashing clubs that you've found there in Turkey.
I hashed first in Turkey when Fethiye did the Turkish Nash hash in 2015. Loved that. A lot more interaction. I mean, as you say, we laid 3 trails recently. Otherwise, Ankara was dormant. So I don't have that much experience of hashing in Turkey. Let's say Dickhead laid a trail. He laid it. I arrived, and that was it, the two of us. I laid a trail, and then Dickhead attended, and so did Humper from Brighton Hash. He's travelled quite a bit. And then this weekend, there were 7 of us.
Oh,
3 of which were existing Ankara hashers. And I think the weekend after Halloween, they're having their ag poo. And I think they're going to try and make Dickhead the new GM, because their old GM, Smiley, who turned up after the hash, she said she was GM for 10 years and she's just had enough, and she's got a lot of stuff going on at work that she just can't put the time aside. So hopefully, and the more we've advertised on the Ankara hash on Facebook, there's quite a few people saying, I'm coming back to Ankara, great, I want to hash again. I think they just needed that external stimulus just to get it going again, because obviously when things went dormant from COVID, people do other things. And Go-Kart, he was just saying, because he was the acting GM after Smiley stepped down 6 months ago, he just said it was wonderful to hear the sound of on the streets of Ankara and to see the flower markings again.
yeah.
The spirit was there. They just needed that G'ing up. It's nice to, let's say, be involved in trying to revitalise a hash. Because most people that have hashed and having ever enjoyed hash just need that little nudge to get back into it if they do go into dormancy.
Yeah, when the habits change. Have you made it down to Istanbul for a hash?
No, I haven't. I'm actually off to Antalya this week. What I've been told is that nearly every hash in Turkey hashes on a Sunday.
Huh.
Because so many people work Saturdays.
Yeah.
We didn't know that, so we laid a trail 6 weeks ago on a Saturday, 3 weeks ago Saturday, and Saturday just gone. Then they're laying trail in 2 weeks Sunday, and then hopefully that'll get a few more people. And I believe Antalya does that, Fethiye does that. Izmir? I've only read recently that Istanbul seems to be in dormancy. I haven't tried too hard because I haven't had a chance to visit Istanbul. I'm back to Switzerland 2 weekends a month, or I'm away.
It's a city. If you haven't been to Istanbul in your life?
I've only flown through it.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Well, you've got to walk through the market and everything else like a tourist and see Hagia Sophia. It's great.
Next time the partner flies over, we'll try to do a weekend in Istanbul to experience all that. One of my really good friends, Shamcock, the female one from Stuttgart, she's really good at putting this is where we went in certain cities. And actually, I was at a wedding last weekend in Croatia, in Motovun, which is well worth a visit. It wasn't a hash weekend per se, but it was very hashy. Yeah, she's really great at go to the city. And I believe they would have done it in Turkey, but too many of the people that were invited are under, let's say, US government advice not to visit Turkey.
Yeah.
Or during the planning, Turkey was a non-visitable country, but it is now.
Wow. We went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. We had a hash wedding last weekend. It was the weekend before. A Rumson hasher, doggy style, and a Harrisburg Hershey, namaste and watch. So it was pretty good hash weekend. A lot of the elder Rumson guys were also there, and a mix of the whole Northeast U.S. and Canada. And it was a good one.
Cool.
Yeah, hash weddings are definitely fun weekends. A mix of civilians in there.
Yeah. The only hash weekends I've done are actually on where they do the hash wedding at the hash event. But there have been plenty of other weddings where there's a predominance of hashers. And to be honest, most of them, I don't think I particularly change when I'm with the public. Great. Most of my friends and family, I don't change. I don't suddenly put a different hat on. I might tone down the innuendos at work, but that's just typically because I'm working in Turkey, where there's a much higher female ratio than I'm used to working, being a typical aircraft design environment. And also a bit more of a reserved culture. And other places, there's almost no women in the office, so you do have a bit more of a blokey environment, so you don't have to tone it down.
And did you say you're playing rugby? You're playing rugby these days?
No, I'm doing nothing at the moment. I've got a current health issue that I need to resolve before I do anything. I used to play football very well, but no, I've never been big enough to play rugby. Used to play
Okay.
basketball very well. From when I lived in Israel, when I was
Oh
probably
yeah.
school kids in the UK go out and play football. School kids at the Church of England School Jaffa go out and play basketball every day. So
Huh.
when I went back to the UK to play basketball, I was a fucking star.
Nice. Yeah.
Would have been average compared to the typical American, I'm sure. But in the UK, I was a star.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I've got a story like that too. Yeah, I got to play professional basketball in Kuwait, and I think it was pretty much because the color of my hair and my ability to flop.
oh yeah, I played county basketball in the UK, which is probably like the equivalent of your first or second year high school in quality.
Yeah.
But played it all over the southeast of England.
You're cool. So, what about the future? How long is the gig you're doing now with this 2 weeks and traveling scheduled for?
Could be 1 year, it could be two, could be three, could be I retire in a year or two. I'm hoping to retire in the next year, in before 55.
Nice. And what do you think? Is hashing going to play a bigger role then? Or what's post-retirement life thinking about for you?
My partner is not a hasher. She's tolerant of hashing, but not too much. So it would most likely be weekly hashes. We are actually both signed up for German Nash Hash next year. So we're both doing that. We're both 50 plus, and she's not a hasher. For us, we like the next year's German Nash Hash concept of the walk-in. You're not in the accommodation. If you're not connected, you're not involved in Missman, you're not high priority for getting couples only rooms. And
Wow.
her
Yeah.
not being a hash, we don't do dormitories. You don't get the discount for arranging your own accommodation. We're not doing it.
Right.
I can't force her to do it when it's make her uncomfortable. We might be able to afford to do it, but it's not cost effective to pay the full hash weekend and then go and pay for a hotel adjacent.
Yeah. My wife's a hasher. We don't do dormitories anymore either.
No, that's right. I've had several partners in the hashing where you go along, and typically that with my previous partner, yeah, not all events are twin room available. And I think we actually, one of the Swiss Nash hashes I arranged, we were actually in a dormitory. There are only two rooms that were twins. One of the couples, the female cried allergy, and they had to have their own room. Might have been a blag, I don't know. Tolerated that. But most other weekends really were that we could have a twin room or our own separate room. But I'm not as prevalent hashing now and less connected. And also the partner isn't that interested in doing it.
We talked about your hashing in the UK and Europe, and you got your first hash there in Asia. Where else did you go back to in Asia to hash?
Back to in Asia to hash. I don't think I have gone back to Asia to hash.
It was just so you've just had the one Bandung hash. How do you get with the Jakarta guys?
The Indonesia is any that's hashed in Indonesia.
Ah, okay.
So I ticked the box even though I didn't do the circle bit. And as it is, yeah, but back in July, August, we visited Bali and caught up with Tampon, if you know him.
There's a couple tampons. Tampon, does he live in Bali? I'm trying to.
He was born in Jakarta, lives in Bali, in Ubud, runs a crayfish farm and also a vanilla farm, which I've invested in.
Wow. That sounds like a lot. Are you going to make money with that? Might be better. Is it better than crypto investing?
You know what? If it keeps him living his dream for a couple of years, and the deal is I can get free accommodation there whenever I want.
Nice.
I'm sure it takes many a year to pay back what I've invested.
You're in crayfish every time you go, I imagine.
That's right, yeah. If I end up getting some money back from it, I get some money back from it. If not, it helps keep his dream alive for a bit longer. It's looking quite good. He released out a report, and I've got some really beautiful shares written on there, some traditional, let's say, papyrus style leaves. It's been all carved and etched and written on, signed by his partner, the Raj Sama III. etc., etc. Handmade box. It's just sometimes you don't do an investment to get the money back. Sometimes you do it to you put a punt on it, and if you're going to, it's almost like gambling. If you can't afford to
Yeah.
lose it, you invest.
Yeah, very good.
So-
Yeah, I worked in development and worked in developing countries a long time. It's amazing what a small bit of effort and attention is so highly appreciated, and any little contributions can make. Yeah, can help people change their lives. That's good for you.
Yeah.
All right.
yeah.
What else about hash? Anything else we got to talk about? You've done actually an amazing job of naming people. Even though you probably think, oh, I've forgotten a lot of people. Most people have a harder time pulling them up. And you had no prep for this. We just arranged this on the drop of a hat. So good for you.
I remember hashing in Vancouver, and there's actually a girl, and my time in Vancouver was basically because of a friend of mine that I knew from university. She went over to Vancouver, and I think her hash name is hockey stick or hockey goal. I knew her as Rachel Eyre, and she's now Rachel Young. So I went to go and visit the family that she stayed with out there. So I wanted to mention her just because that's a connection through university, as well as we've not mentioned any North American hashing. I spent a bit of time up in Seattle, but I didn't hash with them up there. The 2 month stint when I was working on some hydraulics with the 787 up in Mukilteo. But beyond that, not a lot really.
I was surprised you haven't spent more. That's a giant aircraft area, isn't it?
Yeah. To be honest, I had a chance to go and work there in about 2002, but I turned it down for reasons outside of hashing and work, or as I like to call her, ex-wife.
Wait, do you know who's? I'm thinking of the aircraft people. Do you know Bird Brian?
Oh yeah, of course I know Bird Brian.
There's another aircraft.
Yeah, I think he's more maintenance than design. Yeah, and I know there was a guy that was a hasher who I know from Bandung. He worked in simulation programming, and he had his PPL private pilot's license. I think I met up with him once in the UK, but it wasn't at a hash. But no, there are not that many people from the aerospace that I know. I do vaguely remember my time out in Indonesia that there were like 3 or 4 people that hashed, and a lot of them did miss the Tuesday morning at work. It's just
Was
like
that tolerated in the office?
Yeah, back in the early 90s, didn't have a driver. You started drinking at 5 in the evening. You sometimes people would hit town afterwards, home 2 or 3 in the morning. Happy to write off a Tuesday morning if you have a good Monday night.
Yeah. 1990s in just about everywhere in the world, all the towns outside of the main Western countries, being an expat was just the heyday.
Yeah.
With a free house, a driver, alcohol, the police leaving you alone because of the money pouring in from the foreign companies. It was a good time.
Yeah, sure. And my old man was working for the Indonesian aircraft industry. That's how we wangled my industrial placement year.
Wow.
My job was just to go and meet people and connect with all these other foreign contractors.
Do you bring anybody to the hash from work or anything?
A couple of guys that I've told about, but they're all working on satellites in Zurich. They just found that it was a little bit too much hanging around car parks and not getting out and running. One of them is a very serious runner, so the hashing bit for him wasn't really quite what he was looking for. Mm-hmm. And the other guy he liked the drinking, but not the hanging around.
You're going to German Nash Hash. Anything else you planning that's a hash event in your calendar in the next year or so, or is that it?
Oof, blimey. I like to lay what is the Beaujolais Thursday run. 3rd Thursday of November is Beaujolais Day. Obviously, more famous in France. That's where traditionally, the first wines of this year are opened.
Oh.
And used to be a big thing on TV. Is it going to have a banana hint to it? Is it going to have a blackberry hint to it? It's meant to be a big indicator for how good or bad the whole of the wines across the whole of France are going to be. Me and a good friend, she used to be named something, but she hated. So I won't repeat that on here. She's renamed Her Majesty Hardly Wines, HW.
Yeah. So where are you going to do that this year?
We're doing it in Zurich. That's where we always do it. It's someone that I actually worked with as well when we worked on medical leave act stretchers near to Zurich. She went to travel South America with her husband for a year or two, but we tried to do that. So I'm actually having an extended weekend in Zurich to go and lay our, in inverted commas, annual Beaujolais hash run.
Oh, that's
And
great.
trust me, it's very difficult to get Beaujolais Nouveau in central Zurich. So we get Beaujolais from 2022 and just update the last number.
Yeah.
And this year I'm throwing in a curveball because I'm going to take a couple of bottles of Turkish wine, and rather than having snacks in circle, we just provide bread and cheese.
Oh, no, that sounds nice. Let me get you the traditional ending question. Is the RA always right?
Ooh, all depends if I'm the RA.
Okay.
I believe the GM's never wrong, but I'm not sure about the RA.
Okay. All right, that was a good journey through your history and commenting on hashes and hearing a lot of names. Some I'm not familiar with. I'm sure a lot of people know some of those. Very good. And people can find you if they can make their way to Zurich in about a month. They can get to the Beaujolais Trail and see you at the next German Nash Hash.
Yeah, it's difficult. A lot of attendance is difficult. Again, when you don't live in the same city as your partner, to go away on a hash weekend and not go and visit them makes for a pretty tough living.
Yeah.
And we all know happy partner, happy life, blah, 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 and all that. To be honest, the partner said, if we live together, you can go and do more hashing. And
That sounds like the best advertisement for it that I can think of. Yeah, that's great.
Best of both worlds. You get to live with your loved one and she lets you go hashing more. What could possibly go wrong?
You're going to have envious people out there.
Good. And just say to everybody, nothing wrong with taking a break from hashing, but don't forget, there'll be as many people happy to see you back as don't want to see you back. Who knows? Enjoy it for yourselves. And you only ever get out what you put in as well. That's something I've really thought quite important. Turn up and just be a mute. Don't get anything out.
Mimi, we didn't ask about what you are doing in current mismanagement.
Well,
so
currently,
which hash are you tyranting over now?
Oh, tyranting. I'm tyranting from afar. I was requested to become GM of Winterthur Schaffhausen by Moose Diver, the founder. I'm sure Moose. And the goal was to get to 200 runs, and then they might call it a day. And it was 186 runs. And that, I think, was about 8 years ago.
Where are you?
And get this, I actually left Switzerland 5.5 years ago. So I've been GMing from remote, and I've got an absolute wonderful hair raiser and someone who is actually probably in reality more of the GM than I am. And that's Lidu. Loves it down under. She's a very prolific hasher in Switzerland. She does the bitch hash on a Tuesday with people like Chainsaw, Shaggy, Blackadder. And she's pretty much the driving force currently of Winterthur Schaffhausen, and obviously still remains with Zurich. She also attends the Arda hash.
What's your run count now?
I think we're upwards of about 260.
Oh, wow. You've exceeded expectation.
Oh, exceeded by far, yeah. We're there for 2 years to get 14 more runs. And that's when I left. We got the 14 more runs in about 16 months after the request. We've pretty much done a monthly hash since then. A few gaps, obviously, with COVID thrown in there. And as a collective, the three of us, we organised Swiss Nash Hash 2020. Oh, would have been 2. I didn't even know I was going to make it to Switzerland because I was in the UK stuck until 2 weeks before the event. Interesting times.
How does that ag poo happen? The annual general piss up AGM for that hash?
We don't really have one. Me, Moose, and Lidu got our own upper mismanagement chit chat. People come to any one of the three of us to say, I want to lay a trail on this date, I want to lay a trail on that date. We've been doing quite a bit of code sharing, shall we say.
That's good. That's saving a hash club. Good for you. Indeed. Yeah. It does sound like a bit of tyranting from afar by several people. So good for you guys.
Yeah. So keeping it going, hopefully. And knowing my luck, I'm probably going to get a job back in Switzerland ready to take the reins properly, and we do decide to wrap it up. Who knows? Who knows what the future will bring?
Yeah, that's likely for your sins.
Hopefully keep as many kennels going as possible.
Good for you. You didn't know that you were on video this whole time in the first part of this session.
Yeah, I don't really do podcasts. Most of my experience of podcasts is just listening to them rather than watching them. So I'm probably sitting there doing this, stretching.
Absolutely. People are going to start sending you all kind of cures for what ails you when they see this podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, completely oblivious to the fact I was on camera. So, at least you knew it was natural.
Yeah, and this is an amateur podcast, and hashers are real people. So thanks for your time.
And there's probably going to be a few psychologists going, "Oh, you need to get that sorted." Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your childhood. Who knows, indeed.
Yeah, I think all your relationships will be intact.
Cool. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. A bit ad hoc, but yeah, it's been nice to be involved. Saw a lot of other illustrious names on the lists of people you've already done podcasts with, so nice to be part of that.
Great. I hope it'll help spread the word and spread the consent of people who don't have to be afraid, no matter what kind of shape they're in and what kind of twitching they do on screen, that they're willing to come to. All right, I'll say goodbye. On.
Okay, on.
To close the circle, here's the Hash Anthem sung by Mother Hash.
Swing low, sweet child.